everybody to the Strategy and Resources Committee meeting today. So I'm in the chair, the leader and chief executive. I think you're at a meeting on local government reorganisation down in Exeter, which was arranged before we changed the calendar of committee meetings. So I'll be chairing it. Can remind everyone to turn your phones off or to turn them to silent. Remind everybody that there are members of the press attending virtually. I think Councillor Milton's attending virtually as well. And those of you attending virtually, as always, can you make sure you turn your microphones off to avoid any disruption. And the meeting, as ever, is being recorded, and you'll all be able to watch it again on YouTube. A reminder to councillors, so to make sure that people attending virtually can hear, can we speak clearly, and a reminder to councillors to not use each other's first names, but councillor surnames. There's no fire alarm planned, so if you hear the fire alarm, leave the building via the nearest marked fire exit. And also just to be aware that notes and anything on your iPad that can be seen on the YouTube video once it goes live. Thanks very much. Have we got any apologies for that?
Yes, Chair. As you said, we've got apologies from Councillors Clayton, Councillors Hunt and Wilkinson, and as you just mentioned, Councillor Milton has joined us virtually, but will not be able to take part in any votes, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Item 2, can we approve as a record the minutes of the last meeting held on the 2nd of March? Close one. In favour? Thank you. Item 3, items brought forward, which in the opinion of the chair should be considered by the meeting a matter of urgency. Nothing's been brought forward. Item 4, any declarations of interest?
I've received none, Chair.
Okay. Item 5, agreeing the agenda between Part A and Part B. There's no Part B. So if we move on, item 6 is a report on the North Devon Biosphere Strategy. I don't know who's presenting that. Mark. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, hopefully this is a fairly straightforward report. Members may recall that the Biosphere sent up its draft strategy. This is the 10-year strategy in the autumn last year, so September and October. It was out for public consultation. I think members will send their link to that consultation to have a look at the draft. There was a coordinated response sent from North Devon and Torridge officers that went back to the Biosphere. That included comments from the both planning policy teams. Those comments have now been taken on board and are incorporated in the latest version of the strategy that's now attached to my report. And the recommendation to members is that we endorse that strategy. It will be ratified later on this year. Torridge, my counterparts at Torridge are presenting a similar report to their members this month as well. And then there's just a couple of other recommendations in there to sort of, they're almost housekeeping recommendations really. One is the Biosphere officer and Andy Bell has proposed a partnership agreement as well, which sets out what the different partners, what their roles are within the current structure of the Biosphere, and also proposing that we sign a service level agreement, which just formalises our funding to the Biosphere. There's already 15,900 allocated in the budget for this financial year. This agreement really just formalises that, because we need to update our service level agreement, because I don't think the previous one was ever brought to a committee. But the 15,900 figure, that's what we've been paying for the last 7 years.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions, comments? Councillor Ricky Knight and Councillor Lee. Councillor Ricky Knight first. Go on.
Thank you, Chair. Yep, well, I made quite a few comments last time to the draft when Mark II presented the report, and I have no questions, but I have a few statements. Namely, well, it's been a fantastic journey that Andy Bell has taken this taken this project through from the early days of the Greatfield and Gordon Burroughs and the SSSI and the World Heritage Site to this position where the biosphere is now such a significant part of North Devon economy. You only have to look at 19 targets. You read those 19 targets and then nodding your way through all of them, saying yes, 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 targets, aspirations, whatever. I think it's a fantastic report, and North Devon Council has been with this journey trajectory throughout the 30 years plus that the biosphere has been with us, and it will be with us forever, and it will be with us forever with this sort of input. So I'm chuffed a bit. I particularly looked at target 12, which reminds us of the impact that it has on our economy because of the tourists that come to the southwest and North Devon. It's one of the major reasons they come here, and one can see why. You know, the recommendations are in a sense no-brainers, and you know, the partnership and funding agreements, it's not much, let's put it that way. I appreciate that. So I commend this report. Thank you to both Marks and the whole team that put this together, and to Andy Bell in particular, if you like, as a grand vizier of the whole project now. So there you go, those are my statements. So I recommend the report to everybody, I'm sure.
Thank you. Councillor Caroline Neva.
I'm just checking, that's you proposing that the recommendation.
I am by recommending, I meant I'm proposing. Thank you.
I would like to second that. And I also, I mean, I don't have questions, I have a couple of statements as well. And actually, I'm really happy that you identified target 12, which is that more than 90% of visitors cite nature as a key reason for visiting. Because I think we all know how special North Devon is, and particularly that coastal strip, and all the other designations sort of speak to that. But actually, this is world recognition of how special this area is. And I think for me, I really wanted to thank all of those officers, different organisations all over the place who have been involved in taking them forward. It's a really, really good piece of work. And I think particularly what I'm happy about is that there's an understanding about how the value of the very, very special asset that we have in the biosphere is reflected in the way in which this council approaches planning, and that the recommendations in here are all about that. And we're certainly leading the way in terms of biodiversity net gain and all of that sort of stuff. So really, I just wanted to speak in praise of this and all the work that's gone into it, and second the recommendation.
Thank you. Anybody else? Oops, yes, Councillor Milton.
Oh, lovely, thank you. I'll prove that I'm actually here. Just to endorse it really, and I think rather than looking at the detail, because undoubtedly over time and over the duration of this service level agreement, the ambitions within it will change. That's inevitable. But the reality is there is an increasing focus from government on the 30x30 objective, and that's going to be absolutely crucial, whether it be within the term of this council or in whatever iteration it takes in the future. So my endorsement as well. That was all. Thank you.
Very much. Well, we've got a proposer and a seconder, but all those in favour?
Can I just mention that my brother is on the board of the biosphere, I believe. So I'd really just mention that, even though I've got no particular interest personally.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that, Mark. Seven of the options for the Widden Valley footbridge.
So the Widden Valley footbridge forms part of a very popular circular walk up of Widden Valley. But it was inspected by Devon County Council in error in January 2024. They found that the main beams on the bridge were very rotten, So contact the North Devon Council. They agree the bridge should be closed if it wasn't safe. So over the time we have looked at trying to work out ownership of the bridge and responsibilities. There was no, we can find no record of who is responsible for the footbridge. One bank of the stream that the bridge sits on is construction. And we did approach the PSCs to see if they would contribute, but they said they wouldn't, but they would be happy to help transfer the land to North Devon Council. So so why I'm here today is just to get some recommendations on the way forward. There are three options. So the woodland is accessible at the moment, but only from one end. So people still access the woodland. I suspect there are fewer people doing that. And certainly we've had lots of inquiries from the public about not being able to use the bridge and complete the circular walk. So we've had three options. One is to just take the bridge away and just allow people to use the one access in and out of the woodlands. The second one is to replace it with a new timber bridge. That's in the region of £16,000 to do that. And the third one is to replace it with a steel frame bridge, which is in the region of £21,000. But looking this morning, the timber bridge, they say it's been treated to provide a service life of around 30 years. The steel frame bridge, I couldn't find any information for, but I'm assuming it would be longer than that. So it really up to members what they want to do on each of those three options.
Okay, thank you very much. I think Councillor Rutty, as a board member, wanted to just make a brief statement.
Yeah, I just want to.
So we can hear you.
I just wanted to address members and just advocate for the replacement of the bridge, either in timber or steel frame form, because it is a good community asset and it is an environmental enhancement for a lot of the people in Midland Valley and Westacott, and especially the local school in Westacott does use the bridge to access the woods. And I think it would actually be a very detrimental, would be a disadvantage and detrimental to their environmental education if we were to not approve a replacement for this bridge. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much. Any Councillor Caroline Weaver.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Andrew. I've got a question actually about the Pierce's land bit and the suggestion of there being a land transfer. Is that transfer necessary in order to be able to do any works to the bridge?
No, but I believe you would need a works license. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
So sorry, a supplementary question, if I may, which is there any other benefit to the council of doing that land transfer?
Well, we're already maintaining part of that land as part of the cycleway and the woodland. Erroneously, we assumed it all belonged to the district council. So we do sort of cut the verges up there. We do inspect and maintain the trees on that land. I think having it as our land would make a lot of sense.
Okay, so sorry, could you mind if I just come another quick supplementary, really quickly? So is there an urgency for us to do that? Because what I'm really aware of is that we've been, officers have been very clear with the capacity within the legal department to undertake things like land transfers. Then what I'm wondering is this a priority, or is this something which we could move on to when we've dealt with things like transfers for local government reorganisation purposes?
So just to be clear, you mean the transfer of the land,
Yeah.
not the repair of the bridge?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say it would be a nice to do thing at some stage. But if the decision is to replace the bridge, then I'm sure someone can organise that, or the states can organise a works license with PS. I don't think that would be too difficult to do.
Okay.
John.
Joe, I was just going to say, obviously, as Andrew's pointed out, I think it would tidy things up in terms of we were currently maintaining the piece of land anyway. And obviously then we communicate the requirement to obviously get the license in place. But yeah, either or can take place. We can get a license in place to have the works done on Pierce's land and then follow up with the land transfer at a later date. So if they want to proceed with the land transfer as part of the same piece of work, as part of the same project.
It just the implications that it has on the other asset transfer work that we're doing, which I know is going to stretch.
It's not, I think, unless Simon corrects me, it's not a significant piece of work in terms of the land transfer on the legal team. So it wouldn't have a detrimental impact on the wider piece of asset transfer work that's taking place.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, Councillor Maskell.
I think we should replace the bridge. Obviously, for the community, for schools, it's a valuable asset, and it sounds as if it's a good idea to acquire the piece of land if we're already looking after it. Particularly. Do you call them ransom strips with builders? If Pierce's own it, then you don't know in the future they might decide to do something else with it. I don't really know the piece of land, but so I think that's a good idea. Wooden sounds, that's quite a long lifespan for a wooden bridge, isn't it? A steel bridge might be a bit ugly, and also. I don't know. I think wood sounds better, but
Okay, Councillor Prance.
Yeah, I thought I was going to say quite the opposite. 16,000 on ton timber will not, and it won't last 30 years. We've got a similar thing on Millennium Green in Bratton where 10 years ago, it's a Millennium Green. So 10 years ago, we had to replace timber bridges. So and I think we ought to go for steel. I think we should go for galvanized steel, because you can always paint it and look at what you're like. I know that it doesn't quite sound environmentally friendly, but this is a job that would come back in 10 years if we don't do it that way. I think the extra 5,000, 6,000 cost a bit more to galvanise it perhaps, but take a little bit longer to get it galvanised. But I think that would be a permanent solution, because otherwise we're just giving our new authority another problem in 10 years. 12 years' time, in my view.
Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Lever again. Yes.
I think that's really interesting, and actually I was a bit wavering between the two, but actually I completely hear what you say, Councillor Price. I think that's really helpful to share your experience about a wooden bridge, and the fact that a galvanised steel one can be painted. I suppose for me, it is a no-brainer that the bridge is replaced, because as Councillor Rutty says, the school at Orchard Vale up there, it was very much designed with the idea that the children there have access to the woodland, that there are lots of footpaths and so on and so forth. I'd quite like it if more parents walked their children to school rather than drove, but that's a different issue. But it's a really well-used and important piece of woodland and access to the countryside. And of course, further to the east, there is the Council Petrinos trying to get your attention.
Yes.
Is going to be that larger development which is starting now. So actually looking after access to countryside and green space is really important. So I think I'm moved towards going for option 3, the replacing the existing bridge with a new steel frame bridge, foundations and steps for 21,000. I understand this to come from the earmarked reserves. I suppose I'm slightly confused as to why the maintenance hasn't been taking place of our asset anyway, but that's kind of by the by. So in terms of the recommendations, I would like to move recommendations 3.1 and 3.2 going on, 2.1 to 2.3 on the basis that the option 3 identified at paragraph 5.4 for the steel framed bridge is the choice that we go for. That's what I'd like to propose.
Thank you. Councillor Petrinos.
Yeah, thanks. So if we're talking about a steel frame bridge, I mean, in the report it talks about 21,000. If it's galvanised, it's going to be more. And in the reserve that the money is going to come from is only £23,000. And that's going to be for replacement in the future of plant and machinery and stuff. So what impact will that have if we did that on the future replacement of plant and machinery?
Yeah, so Chair, obviously within the parks budget, there are budgets for other works and equipment. The reserve's been built up from a residual balance when we brought the service back in-house. So that's been used to buy individual bespoke pieces of equipment. Obviously, this would reduce that reserve right down. So any future equipment requirements would need to come out of the existing base budget for parks. If it's larger equipment, that would be subject to a capital bid coming forwards, just like any other service area. So this is just a residual balance that's been gradually being used over the years since we brought the service back in-house.
So just to be clear then, it's not needed, is that right?
The reserve's needed because it has been funding equipment needs that have been coming up. So it's negated the need to come forwards for other funding bids. Obviously, once that reserve runs dry, then obviously the only options then are to fund equipment replacement through the existing budget that Andrew has for the revenue budget, or larger equipment needs would need to come through the normal capital bidding process.
Thanks for that clarification. We've got a proposal. Do you have a seconder, Councillor David Knight?
Yeah, I would second that. But I'd just like to note that the land transfer part doesn't cause any delay to getting on with the works. If we get that works license, brilliant, and then that can kind of slot into place when that happens.
Okay.
Yeah, just to clarify, Chair. So 2.3, the recommendation is to investigate and undertake the transfer of the land. That wouldn't stop the work taking place, because if that's a more longer term piece of work, then a licence could be put in place in the meantime to have the works carried out.
Brilliant. Thanks. Okay. All those in favour? Against? Abstention? Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. Thanks, Andy. Okay, item 8 is an update from the Barnstable Place partnership. I think before you give your report, I think Councillor Prowse wanted to just introduce it really.
Yeah, Chair, I just want to say, I chair this partnership, which started off as the Barnstable Regeneration Board, was mentioned in the report. And it's really been a bit of a journey, and I'm hoping not to have to chair it for much longer, because the intention is that this is a bit of work that's going to be handed back to the people that work and live and sort of run the town. So it started as a council initiative, as the report said, but it's actually now, and it's one of the things that I do enjoy going to. I hope I can still go, even if I don't chair it, because it actually is quite a vibrant get together, and you actually hear of all sorts of community stuff and partner work that's going on in the town centre. And I just wanted, as an introduction, to say, through the Future High Streets Fund capital process, it's been a really good sounding board and actually very supportive. And I think that some of the key partners, obviously the voluntary sector, but the police take this partnership very seriously, report back regularly, get very involved, and actually take on a lot of initiatives as well, as do a lot of the other partners. But I just wanted to say well done to the team. And our culture bid and the stuff that's going on in the town only came about because this partnership was there behind it to support it. And I think, say thank you to Hannah and her team. Anyway, I just wanted to say that up front. Well, we haven't got very much longer in the council anyway, so, but I'd still like to, bit like Bill Blythe said when he retired from the college, you'd still like to be involved in this, which is a credit to this partnership, isn't it? And I'm exactly the same, but just say thank you to Hannah. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think, well, hopefully we'll all echo that. It's, I mean, our partnership working is something that will come on to the Corporate Affairs Challenge in a minute. That's something they picked up as a real positive. And I think the Barnstable Place partnership, from what I've seen, is definitely one of those really successful partnerships. Anyway, do you want to?
Lovely. Well, thank you, members, and thank you for that introduction. So the report that comes before you today is an update to a report you received back on the 6th of October, which was about the whole Barnstable Work Programme. This picks up on an element of that, which, as you introduced, is the Barnstable Place Partnership.
I think the really important thing to note is that this is about the multi-agency approach. So the bits that we're talking about today are the kind of the true multi-agency partnerships where we are all working together to deliver these. So that's the first thing to say. Under the terms of reference for the board, there is a recognition and a need to report back to the kind of individual organisations. So this reports that this kind of formal reporting structure for us as North Devon Council. And it's obviously an update on the Place Voting Action Programme and how that meets both our Barnstable vision and our corporate plan objectives. So in terms of the report, you will obviously see we go through the Barnstable vision, which this is aiming to meet. Also picks up on the setting up of the Place Partnership Board. And like Councillor Prowse alluded to, the partnership is focused on the needs of the town rather than just being a council-led, business-led or community-led, and it identifies all the action for areas for improvement. You've got the terms of reference for you at Appendix 2, as well as Appendix 1. And at Appendix 2, you've got the Place Voting Action Plan, which is the programme that the partnership is working towards. So the action plan identifies various actions under key themes. The one around improving the look and feel of the town centre, one around the functionality of the town centre, improving the town centre offer, creating opportunities to change, and then improving place management. Appendix 3 gives you an update on the actions and the programmes within all of those themes. And then in addition, the board also receives presentations from various partner organisations, kind of initiatives which are going on in the town. They might be particular issues or new projects that are coming through that other partners are delivering. So you can see there's a whole breadth of activity that the partnership is undertaking. A couple of things just that I wanted to highlight, I think. So under the first theme, which is around improving the look and feel of the town centre, one of the kind of the groups that is working really well there is our street scene group. That brings together operatives who are actually kind of working the town centre. So you've got the town centre rangers from Barnstable Town Council, you have our street marshals, you have some people from our waste and recycling teams, the PCSOs tend to come to those meetings, and it's just a brilliant forum for those operatives who work in town, who are real kind of eyes and ears of the town, report back, talk to each other. They've built fantastic relationships. They deal with anything from where a new bin might be required to kind of where graffiti is a problem, and really kind of getting to grips with what is happening kind of on the town field. So that feels like a really successful kind of group that is coming forward, regularly reporting to the partnership and then onward to ourselves and their onward organisations. It's also where we've managed to kind of come up with ideas for new projects. You'll see within the update there, we've successfully identified and managed to apply for some ASB hotspot funding, which was a result of the police presence, which Malcolm mentioned. That's bringing in about kind of 23,000 this year to look at some of the real key projects of actually, you know, getting some things done. So that really wouldn't have been possible without the partnership. So I think that's kind of a new group that we haven't had working before. We've also got the business forum set up under there, which is starting to bring businesses together to really talk about what they see as the key issues and starting to identify solutions, you know, for themselves, and again reporting it back. So those two really key important groups for me. And then just one other, which I think will probably hopefully be a really positive way forward. We did have an update from DCC from the transport planning point of view. They talked about a lot of the schemes that are coming through. You'll all have heard about them, but you know, the Halford roundabouts improvements, the train station improvements, which I think from the partnership point of view, the biggest, you know, it was great to hear about those updates, but the important part was the relationship, and partners around that table brought up what is the impact of those going to be on the town, particularly in terms of, you know, when they happen, all of those things that we know covered. But it was really good just being able to have that debate in that forum with everybody being able to talk directly to DCC officers, and they have kind of committed to come back and keep hearing the views of the partnership about, you know, as and when those projects happen and how we all work together to get the right messages out there. So again, just that real benefit of kind of having multi-agencies around one table talking to each other. Lots of other bits in there. Happy to take questions.
So Councillor David Knight, then Councillor William.
Thank you very much for that report. I'd like to bring members back to actually 2019, when we had a whole series of meetings. And this comes into point page 116, 4.11, the second part, which is improving the functionality of the town centre. In these meetings, we had a lot of working groups and we drew on pieces of paper and it was all brilliant and there was a lot of energy. And look at how far we've come now. We're nearly approaching kind of the finish of the project. We've got the Queen Alexandra, the car park entrance onto Alexandra Road, bringing more people into the town. I think it's just brilliant that, you know, we're nearly finishing. But one of the pieces that things I did bring up right at the start was signage. Right at that entrance, I do think we have an opportunity to have something that says, this is where the town is. And this is one of the themes that ran through those working groups, passing trade, trying to get more people into the town, what's on, what's happening, when it's happening. I do think we've got an opportunity there to have something there that clearly instigates, this is where the town is. Oh, hang on a minute, I might pop in there and just see, you know, the market's on today, or there's a craft fair or something like that. Just an indication of, you know, it catches someone's eye and they might think, oh, you know, I might go back and pop into town for an hour, you know. Thank you, anyway.
I don't think we can pick up, something has formed part of that project, but I think as we near the end of
Putting a
it.
central car park has helped, Chair, because I think it does give a bit of a clue to, especially the tourists, and it seems to be working already.
It is working.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
We will, like I say, signage has formed part of that project. We will continue to be able to as we kind of near the end of it. But I think the point about particularly what's on and kind of advertising what's happening in town, you know, we get that feedback kind of all the time. We feel like we advertise what's happening really well. But I think maybe because we're in it, we see it. And there are things like that that perhaps we need to review. Are there places, particularly on the outskirts of town, where maybe we can be advertising the town better?
Councillor William.
Right, thank you. I welcome this report, Hannah. It's great. I think you've done marvellous. Dare I mention Ilfracombe? You know, as an Ilfracombe, who laughed? Oh, you did, Ricky. As an Ilfracombe town councillor, I read this and think we're doing it, you know, which is great for Ilfracombe's point of view. But I'd like to see something a bit more firm put in place for Ilfracombe. But that's for further discussion, obviously. So I don't want to, you know, open that up to public consultation at the present moment in time. The only thing that I would like clarification on is on page 121. You refer to the administration and you say North Devon Council will provide the secretariat for the partnership board. Can I just ask if there's any staffing implications and obviously any implications on budget?
So the staffing is within the economic development team. So that's kind of what encompasses in there. No separate budget implications unless, of course, there is a particular project that we might want to come back to look for some match funding for, but no direct. They're all kind of project costs, so not directly with the actual board.
Thank you.
Councillor Ricky Knight.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Hannah. Last time we looked at this, I remember making this point. The town enhancement scheme, I really understand. It's great. It's ongoing. And I'm just looking at challenge 4, because this is what I mentioned before. We've talked about, and I know we're all on the same page. It was looking beyond the shop fronts a bit to the facades, and we talked about pigeons, the bird poo all over the shop fronts, and the gutters full of weeds and broken gutters, etc. I just think that is one of the things that really can disappoint aesthetically the impression of the town. But you do wonders with vacant shops, but there is. I will ask you a question in that case, because I rather ramble on. This is on challenge 4, the last point there on tackling the impact of vacant units. Just answer me. Can you tell me what the group approved design for vinyls? What's that mean?
So obviously, with one of the biggest impact of the vacant units is the empty shop windows.
Windows, yeah.
We've looked at lots of different ways to kind of activate those to, you know, either kind of pop-up shops or to have artwork in them.
Yes.
But actually, kind of one of the easiest and quickest solutions is quite often when you see a shop move up, they will just put a big vinyl on a window.
Yes.
But it not necessarily the most sightly. So we've come up with a sort of generic design that does need to go for planning permission, but we'll be able to that as long as we've got a relationship with the landlord, we can get in quite quickly and put the vinyl on the front of the window. At the moment, it's going to be effectively a really nice picture of Barnstaple, with just the kind of the website on, which will help with the kind of people knowing, you know, where to find out, you know, what is happening. But we're just hoping that will lessen the impact of where you've got an empty window with nothing behind it that's unsightly.
Supplementary question, please, Chair. No. Any progress? Well, we're all on the same page again with regard to vacant, the potential for people to live above shops, and we all know what the problem is. Any progress with trying to find separate entrances to some of these res above shops?
So some of that comes down to kind of obviously the individual units. There is still work progressive with environments in the background with regards to the flood risk.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Price, then Councillor Caroline Lever.
I just want to sort of try to share some of the amount of work that's gone in to some of those vacant shops, you know, individual shops, not just the problem. Contacting the owners, which we've got a complete list of owners. Some of the owners will not respond. Some of them, you know, for various reasons, and maybe they're in a pension fund and they don't want to devalue. We just don't know. But getting them to respond is a real problem. But we put a huge amount of effort into it. One of our meetings, we had Tony Foster from Webbers and John Gay from Right Property come to talk about, and it's really interesting because I think one, you know, and Ricky just mentioned, Mr. Councillor Knight just mentioned it. We really have got to sort of fast track the flood zone 3 issue, because it's now lapping on a lot of those doorsteps right up High Street now. Yep. So we've got to find a way to allow the upstairs of these properties, because that's where and John Gay from Rights made that point, was that the residential, you know, will pay for the capital value of the property, which will bring the building back into life anyway. You know, because then you can let the shop for very little money. And so for me, that, you know, that's our top priority. And Sarah Jane behind me is probably cursing me, but because I nag her about this. We get nagged by the MP's office as well, don't we? So, you know, on a weekly basis. So we've got to fast track that, because that is the one thing that we can. The other thing we have done, which was mentioned at last week's fateful policy committee meeting, when we did the planning report, is of course that we give free planning advice now, pre-application advice to any owners of these shops. And we also do the same in Ilfracombe, and it was suggested on Thursday we do the same in Southport, which I would hope we can implement as well, because, you know, it's going to be a problem. It's increasingly going to be more and more of a problem, isn't it? So finding alternative uses, helping the owners find a solution is a key priority, but particularly this flood zone 3 issue, because the money ain't going to be there anytime soon for flood defences. So we've got to get on with it and find ways of still using these properties. Otherwise, the town centre will become vacant.
Thank you. Councillor Caroline Lever, then Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Hannah, for this report. Always good to hear what the partnership's doing. I'm really pleased that Devon County Council has turned up. I'm interested to see on page 120 at section 6 that the cabinet member with responsibility for infrastructure and with officer support is identified. I'm wondering if he's turned up, and if not, if you'd like a bit of a push on that, and if not him, maybe somebody else. I know he's a very busy man. Anyway, but in terms of County Council, I'm very pleased that you've been getting information about the Longbridge Junction and the railway. I happen to be chair of the Highways Committee, so if you want to have a chat with me about any of that stuff, please just get in touch. And again, what was really helpful with that is that the Town Council have certainly given their views about those projects, and certainly from a County Council point of view and a District Council point of view and the Town Council point of view, we all work together. We work best when we work together. So I'd just like to be positive about that. I was really interested to see that the organogram thing at Appendix 2 identifies under the community networks youth, and I wondered if you could speak to that a little bit, and particularly with regard to the Town Council's involvement with the and County Council as well, with the Youth Council for Barnstaple, where a lot of work has been going into supporting young people to be involved. They've done a lot of consultation with young people, and there's been a big project called Places to Go, Things to Do, or is it Things to Do and Places to Go, whichever way around it is. And one of the things that they have talked about is actually feeling safe or not safe in parts of the town. So I kind of wanted to suggest that might be a helpful link up with the youth council, and particularly if the police are involved. The report from the youth council identified the value of the street marshals in Barnstaple, and it was suggested that other towns in Devon could follow Barnstable's lead, I would say, in many, many ways, frankly. So I just kind of wanted to make those link ups for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the youth network absolutely was that.
It's not a youth network, it's the youth council.
Yes,
specifically.
The one referred to here was the one that One Barnstable were leading, which has led into the youth council, as I understand. So the youth council and the newly elected mayor will be that representative who comes to the Place Partnership in future. So we will be using that kind of as the youth network on that side. So yeah, it'd be great. It'd be a brilliant thing.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Bell and then Councillor Walker.
Okay, it's
Yeah,
it's a housing related point. In the Councillor Caroline Lever and I both got an economic briefing from Devon County Council, and I've recently had Braunton added to it as a essentially town because it's obviously that gets me into trouble. But it's the point being that this goes back to what Ricky Knight was saying. This is a housing issue. Barnstable is a fantastic town. I do want to be clear that I love Barnstable before people say otherwise. It is a fantastic town, but it has an 8.5% long-term vacancy. I think that's over 3 years. The short-term vacancy is about 17.5%. It's massively above the GB average. Barnstable is brilliant, but it is simply too large. Only there is a possibility it may become the capital of Devon in the near future, which we're all very excited by. And I'm glad to see some excitement about that, but it may become the capital of Devon. That might make a difference, but actually it's just too big. We need to start thinking not simply about the shop top properties, but perhaps large chunks of how, we need to be thinking that, if there are empty shops, we should be perhaps thinking of bringing the outskirts of Barnstable into housing use rather than continuing to hope that New Look will come back or we'll get a resurgence of VHS in the area. These things aren't going to happen. We need to really think, can we convert entire parts of Barnstable into housing, which would bring in that housing that we need and also perhaps regenerate the essential core of Barnstable, which is a fantastic place. As I've established, I like Barnstable. I don't want to pull the entire thing down.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Bell. I think, this is something that the Joint Planning Policy Committee, I'm sure, are looking at in the preparation of the local plan.
New Look. I think New Look's still there, Chair.
Sorry?
I think New Look's still there. I don't know if if Councillor Bell has been buying good value clothing lately, but I think that would be.
Sorry, Councillor Walker.
Really pleased to see about the youth involvement, and I just wanted to highlight something that's actually starting this week for the youth of Barnstable, which will be a drop-in centre at the youth house, which also is a fantastic resource that we must protect. So there's a drop-in sessions for under 13 to 17-year-olds who haven't got anywhere to, who fancy hanging out in town but not in town. There's going to be some drop-in sessions organised over the next few weeks on a Tuesday evening, so which I think is a fantastic thing to do. And as I say, the other thing that we need to do is make sure that our youth facilities that we actually have, such as the youth house, are maintained and flourish and allowed to flourish. And if anybody's interested in going on the board of the youth house, they are looking for some more trustees.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Yes, Hannah.
Thank you. I just did want to address Councillor Jean Williams' point earlier about Ilfracombe. So just to say, well, obviously this is the Barnstable Place Partnership. One Ilfracombe is effectively the Place Partnership for Ilfracombe, and we will in future be bringing similar reports on the work of that partnership board to here as well. So it would just want to.
Right, thank you,
Yeah, can I move the recommendation, but delete the word note and say welcome? Because it's, you know, for officers to produce a report like this with all these actions and we just note it, it's all a bit, you know, isn't it? So like I said, we welcome the report.
Fine, I think councillor Caroline Levy, you were going to second that. Good. Brilliant. Thank you very much. I mean, before we go, I just want to say that, I mean, forever on social media, you see people slamming Barnstable. And in, you know, in my other life, I travel around, you know, small towns all over the southwest. And I mean, and Barnstable does have a real buzz about it. And I know that there are empty units. I know that there's bits of antisocial behaviour, but it's got a real life to it that I think other towns in the southwest perhaps have lost altogether. And I think we should be really proud of everything that the partners that we work with have done to keep Barnstable going in what are undoubtedly tough times for retail and hospitality sectors. Anyway, having said that, we vote to welcome. We do. Those in favour. Thank you very much. Thanks, Alan. Where are we up to? Lost me. Right. So this is the report on the corporate peer challenge, and I think specifically the action plan that's come from that. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you. Good morning, members. Yes, I'm here to talk about the peer review report.
I'm sorry, Nikki can't hear a single word you're saying.
Speak after me. I'll talk louder. We're here to talk about the peer review report and the associated action plan. Obviously, you've seen the report and you've seen the action plan, so I don't intend to go through it in any great detail. But just to sort of flag up, as you're aware, the peer review team were here 21st to the 24th of October last year. They provided us with lots of information. The report, as you will have seen, was a really positive report. It describes NDC as a well-led, community-focused authority with a strong sense of place and a clear commitment to improving the outcomes for our residents. These are just a couple of areas that I sort of specifically picked up from the report. It also describes us as NDC is a proactive council with place-based roots, strong foundations of leadership, governance, community engagement, alongside a committed and engaged workforce. It identifies so many positives throughout the report. Again, something that I think was very passionate to me is it talked about our strong family feel and our culture. And I think the peer review team found that whoever they spoke to during their review here with us. As you're aware, peer review team, they act as a critical friend. And we decided that because we value external independent challenge, still allowing them to come in and do this review for us, we felt would be helpful. We've got now some recommendations from them, as you've seen in the action plan, but we felt that it helps to put us in the best place possible moving forward into LGR. So they're due to do a return visit back in October this year, and so they will be looking again at our actions in the action plan and then assessing to see how we're doing within the outcomes of that action plan. As you're aware, the report and action plan went to scrutiny and policy on the 9th of April. Scrutiny and policy recommended that to yourselves that the action plan be adopted, and there was just a minute extract with that as well, which you will have seen. So happy to. Do you want to add anything to that, Tom?
Just so that tells you, the extract from scrutiny and policy meeting is on your papers this morning, so that's shown as a separate addendum. Obviously, there was quite a discussion at scrutiny and policy meeting on Thursday evening. Obviously, there were two recommendations that came forward, obviously for this committee to consider. First one was around adopting the action plan to take forwards set out in the report, and a second recommendation around considering the lead member roles for rural communities, and that all lead member roles are allocated to members who are a true reflection of the role, including being from that ward area or having experience understanding of that role where reasonable and possible. Obviously, lead member roles are determined by full council once they've gone through group leaders. So it's only full council that can decide the remit and identity of those lead member roles. Obviously, the discussion around the lead member role came from the action plan, and noting in page 184 of your papers this morning, that was around the secondary recommendation from the peer review around North Devon Council being committed to improving residents' lives in Ilfracombe, and the council should continue to prioritise its most deprived towns once the commission closes. That was around the Property Truth Commission. The action within the action plan sets out for a lead member to identify for Ilfracombe subject to approval of full council next week at the 22nd of April. The discussion that took place on Thursday at scrutiny was around that lead member role. Obviously, there is currently a lead member role for coastal communities, which already covers Ilfracombe. So the situation behind that proposal within the action plan was that role be expanded so that the Ilfracombe was within the title. So it brings that out within the title of that lead member role, not a new lead member for Ilfracombe solely, but the existing coastal communities role that's in place, which includes Ilfracombe already, just has Ilfracombe in the title so that the emphasis on that focus can be on the Ilfracombe area as well. So that was the rationale behind that within the action plan. I note obviously in the action plan it talks about a lead member being identified for Ilfracombe, so members may want to just amend that action to incorporate that context around the existing community, coastal communities lead member role.
Thank you for that, John. But before you come in, Councillor Petrinos, I think just on that issue, I think it's maybe, you know, because obviously these tables are done in shorthand, but I think maybe if we could accept that what's being proposed is as you say, to, if you like, add a bit to the role of the coastal communities lead member rather than creating a new post or completely changing that post. I mean, one of the things that the Constitution is clear about, and I think it's, you know, it's really good, is that these lead members are appointed for the duration of the council, and I think that we are seeing now the benefits of having that continuity of people in those positions, and I'd hate to lose that if I'm honest, from that. But on that basis, is it, before this goes forward, is it possible to full council, is it possible just to clarify the wording in that particular section to make it clear that it is the coastal communities lead member, but and that part of the job description includes looking at Ilfracombe. I think the thought was that the lead member for regeneration and the lead member for coastal communities between them would be able to keep an eye on Ilfracombe in particular.
Absolutely, because obviously, yeah, lead member for regeneration obviously doesn't just cover one area, it covers the whole of the district. Right. So it encompasses Ilfracombe already, so that is already picked up under the lead member for regeneration we already have. The lead member for coastal communities already covers Ilfracombe. So again, it's just bringing those two roles together and really just bring that context out. So Chair, happy the action in the action plan, which currently talks about a lead member being identified for Ilfracombe, we would just recommend that being changed subject to your committee approval, so that it emphasises that the current lead member for coastal communities that already covers Ilfracombe has Ilfracombe in that title, so that we can emphasise that focus on the Ilfracombe area and its regeneration in conjunction with the existing lead member for regeneration.
Great, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Petrinos and Councillor Williams.
Thanks. Yeah, obviously it's a good report, and I welcome it. I'm not going to talk about lead members. I'm sure others will. The thing I'm concerned about is it's not the action plan per se, and obviously parts of the action plan we need to do.
I think that's next door. That's right.
One look from us, that's for that.
Sorry, Councillor.
Clearly parts of the action plan make sense and they need to be done. But we know that officers are stretched, and they're going to become increasingly stretched as we prepare for our abolition, which is any minute now, isn't it? Any minute. So we don't really want to stretch them any further. And it strikes me there might be bits of the action plan that we don't need to do, because we're not going to be here. to see the benefits of them as an organisation. So and I'm not going to go through individual things. I mean, if there are any things that don't absolutely need to be done in order to prepare for our abolition, then I don't think we ought to do them. Why? What's the benefit? There might be. If there is, then we ought to do it. But I mean, I can't see how otherwise we ought to add additional pressure onto officers who are already juggling too many balls.
Did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I can just cover that off. Obviously, the recommendations have come from the peer review team. They're not statutory recommendations. We don't have to do any of them, as Councillor Petrinos has alluded to. So we've just tried to address the recommendations that have been raised and areas of work that we could do. It's fluid. The action plan, like you say, can evolve, and it will work alongside the work that we've already talked about in preparation for local government reorganisation. So. There are things in there that obviously, like I say, we can evolve and do, and there are things in there that we can be a bit more fluid with as well. So it's something that will be taken into account when we're looking at all of the council priorities alongside all of the other major projects and pieces of work that the council are doing in part of day-to-day activity.
To be clarified, I mean, fluid means we're not going to do them. In which case, we're going to cross them off now.
And obviously, the peer review report obviously been published, and obviously we want an action plan that sits alongside that. We didn't just want to do the peer review report and say, well, here's some recommendations come out, and we're just going to not do any of them. We will work towards the delivery of the action plan, but that will be balanced alongside everything else that we're doing as well. So that's why we obviously tried to be open with those recommendation actions that we put in there, so that they can be delivered upon, but obviously, yeah, not specifically in terms of a strict timeline.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much. With regards to the lead member for coastal communities, can I just remind members, and I'm sure you don't need reminding, that Councillor Wilkinson and myself also are on the Harbour Board. Councillor Wilkinson is the chair and I'm vice chair, and also on the coastal communities, I am his deputy. So obviously I represent, to the best of my ability, Ilfracombe. That's just an aside. But could I ask a question about agenda item 9 from the minutes of the Policy and Scrutiny Committee, please? Recommendation B. Can I ask for clarification? Perhaps I'm being silly, but what is rural communities, the lead member for rural communities? As I say, I just feel that this needs some clarification, and perhaps, I don't expect you to come up with the magic words today, but perhaps you could report back to us once that clarification has been sought.
Chair, all these last few days, this has just turned into a hiatus that we could have easily, through talking this through, we could have sorted it out much more quickly. I think the problem is that the report, and I'm going to quote it, it says NDDC should remain mindful of perception that it prioritises urban areas over rural areas. I think it's just anecdotal. It's what people said. There was no evidence behind it. And I spoke to Peter Jones yesterday, and John. We were on a call together at length. And I, in a way, I wanted to turn that back to policy committee, because the great strength of that committee over the last 3 years have been delving into issues that are important, like agriculture, water quality. And I think that there are issues facing our rural communities. And it would be really great if they could do some work on this to tell us what these issues are, so that we can deal with them within our corporate priorities or hand them over to the new authority. So that's something I think, and he's agreed to that rather than pushing that this point and having a debate. So I think that would be really useful. I mean, my own village, you've got the issues, obviously affordable housing, you've got falling roles in rural schools, particularly more impactful probably than in urban areas. Closed down pubs, shops struggling. There's lots and lots of issues they can do a bit of work on. I think that would be really useful, so that we've got an evidence base that we can build into the new authority. rather than appointing somebody that can do press releases saying how angry we are about this, that, and the other, I think we want to, you know, so and I think Peter Jones and I hope Frank would agree to as chair, while he's still, you know, whoever is the chair after that, that's a bit of work in the next 12 months, really valuable for us to carry out. I mean, I just want to echo what June said. I've known Malcolm Wilkinson since we were teenagers, even though we used to sort of have fighting rugby matches. I think. You know, so it's hard. It's very much an Ilfracombe. And I did say to Peter, and I did, you know, said to other colleagues that I'm not a Barnstable councillor, but I regard it as my town. You know, my ward ends at Ivy Lodge, right on the edge of Barnstable, but you know, Barnstable's in my heart, and I hope that I do a pretty good job. I like to think I do a pretty good job of promoting its, you know, its progress, as it were. So, you know, let's be a bit more realistic. I think rather than appointing people for the sake of it, because there's a bit of anecdotal thing in this peer review, I think it's much more important that we actually do the work, so we get an evidence base. And you know, we're joking aside. I mean, Barnstable is likely to be, isn't it? Looking at these other, the main centre, and there's going to be a big rural hinterland with us. So that bit of work for the new authority will be really, really important. So that's what I'm proposing, is that we chuck it back to policy and say, come on, then you do that bit of work and come back with the evidence to us, and that we support the idea of the coastal communities lead dealing with the Ilfracombe particular issues as well. I think so. That would be my recommendation, rather than accepting the policy committee's.
I think that's really helpful. I think Councillor Knight and Councillor Caroline Lever, and then Councillor Walker. Is that right? Is that way around? Good.
Thank you, Chair. You did say that we'll come back to the member roles, and you're quite right. If you don't mind, June, Councillor Williams, I'd like to carry on from where you left off, as it were, because at the extracted minute from Strategy Resources, notwithstanding your comments, Councillor Prowse, which I heard. Yeah, the B is quite, it's a recommendation. I'll read it because it helps. I'm sorry. A recommendation that Strategy and Resources Committee consider a lead member role for rural communities. Well, in a sense, we've talked about that, but it carries on. It's very pertinent because Adam is looking at lead roles, which is pertinent to several of us here. It's not as though we're defending our roles, but we're trying to explain to ourselves and to each other what is expected of them. It says here, all lead member roles are allocated to members who are a true reflection of the role, whatever that means, including being from the ward area or having experience, understanding of the role where reasonable and possible. I mean, it's pretty open-ended, but it is of interest to individual councillors to see to what extent they can fulfil that role convincingly, if you like. But having heard what Councillor Prowse said about the rural communities league member role and other roles, which are they're hardly up for grabs, but it is pertinent to members and lead members, which, as I say, hopefully we'll get some clarification at the next full council at the AGM and via Adam's feedback to us. Thanks. That's more of a statement than a question.
Councillor Caroline Lever. Oh, sorry, John.
Thanks. Just to come back on my chair, if I can. Obviously, yeah, these were obviously minutes that came from the scrutiny policy meeting. The lead member roles, in terms of being including being from a ward or area, there's no prerequisite to having to be living in that ward or area to be the lead member for a specific function. It's done on suitability and expertise to fulfil that role, and that would be for all lead member roles. In relation to the rural community element, all of the lead member roles that are currently in place do cover rural communities as well with their functions. So housing, for example, wouldn't just focus on the urban areas, it would cover rural areas as well. So I think the importance is around looking at the lead member roles we do have and making sure that they are encapsulating the whole of the district, both urban areas and rural areas, which surely that's the importance behind the current lead member roles in place.
Thank you. Councillor Caroline Lever.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the report, and actually listening to the comments around the table. I'm I'm very much supportive of the idea that yes, we do the work. In terms of the anecdotal feedback that, you know, there's a perception that Barnstaple gets all the attention. I'm guessing, does that come from Facebook? I'm personally not going to base policy decisions or how I vote on what Facebook says. If I did, I'd be imprisoned for corruption, I tell you. I think what I wanted to sort of just say was that the report is a really positive report, and I think it speaks really highly as officers have suggested about the culture within the organisation, and actually how much of a commitment there is both from members and from officers on to actually serving the people of North Devon, and actually how much of a sense of place we have. I am personally rather sorry that district council will be abolished. That's outside our control, because I think what we've got here is something really special. I do quite a lot of work with the Local Government Association, and I've read some of these reports for places where these are not the kind of comments which are made in the reports following peer reviews and peer challenges. So I think we can take some comfort from the good work and actually the way that we operate in a committee system to allow, you know, it isn't the few up in the cabinet who make all the decisions, but actually we work across parties to try to come to consensus, and we try to come to a view that actually balances all the various different competing demands and interests and so on and so forth. There's no perfect answer to any of this, but actually I think what this report demonstrates is that we're doing a pretty good job. There will be things, of course, we get wrong, always, because we're just humans. So I wanted to commend the report and all the work that went into it, both officers and members, and their involvement in helping the team understand our organisation. As far as the action plans go, the report back and the action plans go, clearly we are doing some of those things already, which is great. Completely hear what Councillor Petrino says about actually we need to be a bit careful about where we put our resources so that staff capacity is not stretched even further, because we know we've got a lot of work ahead of us in terms of delivering local government reorganisation as directed by government. So I'm sort of thinking about how do we, as a committee and as a council, how do we keep an eye on what is going on? So I was going to suggest that we need a sort of a regular report back to the council in whatever form, but that perhaps group leaders could get together on a regular basis. I don't know how often, monthly, quarterly, don't know, to actually look at what is going on in terms of the action plan, what decisions need to be suggested in terms of what we prioritise in that action plan, but just so that it isn't just a process of the peer review and then an action plan. We need to keep an eye on it. I mean, and I think one of the things that the report identifies is, and actually I'll bring this up in the work programme, is actually about the reporting back to make sure that particularly members have an understanding about where we are, and that we work together with our officers to make that happen. So that's what I was going to suggest in terms of feeding back and keeping an eye on.
Nikki.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Lever. I think just to pick up on a couple of points. So one of the other recommendations from the peer review was obviously about proactive steps to address overstretched officer capacity.
Yeah.
And as part of the action plan under 3.5, this was a piece of work that we started to informal strategy and resources in terms of members trying to working with us to identify what the key priorities are for the next 2 years leading up to local government reorganisation. Because through that will obviously help us to ensure that we're directing our staff, our employees to the right areas, the areas that have been identified as those priorities. So that should help. And the suggestion of keeping on top of the action plan, I would imagine probably that informal S&R would be a good place so that we're doing that touch base, because we are already sort of scoping and shaping to look at our priorities. So to me, that would make sense. And just one other area that you picked up on, Caroline Lever, was around the perception of the perception that we don't spend so much time sort of on our rural communities. Again, from the action plan, what we've said we will do is we will bring a report back highlighting all of the work that we are actually doing in the rural communities and things. So hopefully that would help to address that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Walker.
Sorry, more comments and questions, sorry. But the one thing I would bring up is the recommendation, the B recommendation that strategy and policy and scrutiny put forward is that we don't have any lead members who are from Barnstaple at the moment. Not one lead member that we currently have lives in Barnstaple or represents Barnstaple. So I think we can really say that we actually have got a good spread of people from the right areas of the district.
You have got a leader in the deputy.
Yeah. You're not lead members. You're not lead members. You're not lead members. You're leader and deputy leader. You're not. The lead members come from the important the places which the coastal communities member specifically is a ward member for coastal community and has extremely good knowledge of the rest of the coast as well because of their background. But I mean, you might be looking at they're saying that people who have experience or understanding of the role. Well, I mean, you can look at me and say that as far as anybody's concerned, I'm an unemployed librarian. What do I know about finance? But I think that I'm reasonably good at working out finance because I'm good at information. So I think that would be dismissing people's transferable skills. If we said you have to have somebody who is sort of really into that, who's really knowledgeable, has worked sort of in that area, doing the role. But that's just on that point B. But the other point is that can we thank Adam for the work he's been doing in making sure that the governance of the lead member roles is up to date and so that we all have proper job descriptions. Because I will be quite honest with you, when I took on this lead role, I didn't actually realise it included the finance. I very much enjoy doing it, but it didn't. My lead member role doesn't say finance anywhere in its title. It says commercialisation and resources. So the work that has been done on clarifying what lead member roles are is vitally important and is one of the really good things that comes out of the peer review challenge. And the other thing, I mean, the peer review, the people who did the interview for the peer review also didn't quite have the understanding of the way our council works because they assume that we have the same level of responsibility and decision making as cabinet members for those roles on council to have a cabinet system, and we don't. And they were really surprised when I said, no, my role is advisory and it's advocacy, and which I think all our lead member roles are to a certain extent. And although our responsibility is to bring forward policy, not to implement policy. And I think Adam's doing a really good job in making that clear and concise, and I just haven't. So I thought probably.
Thank you very much. I mean, it sounds like this. So what we need to do is to look at these recommendations, but I don't know if somebody wants to sort of pull all those various strands together. But it sounds as though one of the things that perhaps we need to do is when we look at this action plan is have an eye to local government reorganisation, and I think, you know, in monitoring this, I think you're right, Councillor Petrinos. There may be things. There are things here that are going to make us much stronger going into a new unitary council, and we should be pursuing those. Because I mean, what a new unitary will want to do is to take the best from everywhere, and if there's stuff that we do well, then I think it's worth making sure that that stuff is done. And I think in terms of the rural communities, I mean, Devon County Council's got a cabinet member for pretty much everything, but that includes rural affairs, and it may be worth talking to her. And then and again, whatever happens, we are going to be in with Torridge in a unitary, whatever shape it takes. But again, talking to our neighbours about how the issues that affect rural communities are dealt with there, and pull something together that can be carried forward, as you say, Councillor, perhaps that'd be helpful. So Councillor Caroline Lever, have you managed to pull together a?
No, all I was going to do was sorry, Chair. I was actually just going to propose the recommendations, but if the feeling is that they need amending in some way, I'd rather leave that to somebody else.
Can I just ask Councillor Lever if she would agree that we bounce back the rural issue to policy as part of the recommendation?
Yeah.
To do that bit of work.
Yeah.
Then the rest of the recommendations, I think we should pull.
Okay, that's really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, just obviously you've got two recommendations in the main report, which is 2.1 and 2.2. Obviously 2.2 was around approving the proposed action plan. We've obviously talked about amending the one action around the coastal community. So if you're happy that 2.2 captures that amendment as outlined in the considerations this morning. Obviously you've received minutes from the Scrutiny and Policy Development Committee meeting, so you may want a further recommendation that notes those notes the recommendations that have come from Scrutiny and Policy and the associated minutes, so it records the fact that that meeting has considered it, and obviously you've considered the outcomes from that meeting this morning as part of your discussions. So therefore just adding a further 2.3 that you're noting those minutes and recommendations that have come from the Scrutiny and Policy Development Committee in the meeting last week.
Okay, that sounds perfect. Have you got that, Ben?
Just a quick thing, actually. That doesn't mean we're voting on the recommendations from the minute extraction, does it?
You're noting the minutes and the extracts of the recommendations that came from the Scrutiny and Policy. Obviously, part of those recommendations were around considering lead member roles. Well, this committee can't consider lead member roles. That's for council to consider next week. So you're just noting the minutes and the extracts of the recommendations that came from that committee meeting only.
Okay. You got a proposer for that?
Second.
Yeah, Councillor Prowse, Councillor Caroline Lever. Yeah, unless you wanted to say something else. No, brilliant. All those.
It might be unclear about who's doing what.
I think proposed by Councillor Prowse.
I'll second.
Yeah, okay, all right. That sounds perfect. All those in favour? Brilliant. Thank you very much. Good. Thanks, Nikki. Thanks ever so much. Yeah.
Sorry, Mark, it's musical bed today.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is a nice straightforward report. It's just recommending the approval and release of section 106 open space funding to Bishops Lympton Council. So the recommendation is that 4,599,000 is allocated to Bishops Lympton towards the cost of purchasing and installing some play equipment. I think it's a slide in the green and safety surfacing underneath it, which all sounds rather good fun. And the second recommendation is that, subject to 2.1 being approved, that SNR committee vary the capital programme by 4,500 and the funds be released, and the funds be subject to a funding agreement upon such terms and conditions that are agreed by the senior solicitor and monitoring officer for external projects.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lever.
Can I propose that we accept the recommendations as set out in the report?
Anyone else want to say anything about it? No? Good. All those in favour? Very much. 3 hours.
Go now.
Okay, where are we now? Work programme. Yes, please, yeah.
Members, this is just your normal work programme, sets out those items you considered this morning on the 13th of April, and just sets out the future meeting items that are currently planned to come to your meeting. So the next meeting in May, we'll pick up the local government reorganisation asset transfer expression of interests that have obviously come back from towns and parishes. That's been released at the moment, and that report will come back to your meeting in May. And then a second report, obviously, from the Parks Manager on potential biodiversity improvements on parks assets. So at the moment, you've only got 2 items for your May meeting. And obviously, in the work programme, then sets out your further items for consideration through the remainder calendar year.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Councillor Caroline Lever.
Thank you very much for this. I was just thinking about the report back from the peer review team about they were talking about useful scheduling updates on partnerships, and obviously we've had one today on the Barnstaple placemaking partnership. I didn't see those within the work programme. The sort of partnership updates as a standard agenda item, and I wonder whether that should be there as is it part of the action plan.
Obviously, we were considering the action plan this morning, so obviously on the out. Still waiting for that to be approved first before then we weave any of that into obviously the work programme. So we'll consider that and obviously have conversations with group leaders about when you would like to see that scheduled in which month meeting.
I think it says on the action plan it should be, or the report at least, it should be a standing item, because we're involved in all sorts of different partnerships and relationships are what's going to keep us going.
Yeah. And the importance of that is the LGR process, because we want to make sure all those good partnerships like the one we had this morning are embedded within the new authority moving forward. So it's important it's highlighted, and we'll have that conversation with the group leaders and we'll build that into the work programme.
Fantastic, thank you.
Brilliant. The only other thing is to build in somewhere. I don't know if it's coming as part of the performance report, but an update on the Corporate Peer Challenge Action Plan. Bearing in mind they're coming back in October. Again, to have that come to us maybe once every couple of months.
We will, yeah. As touched on, I think in the early conversation, we'll obviously initially have that resource conversation with members as part of the informal SNR meetings, because obviously that was where we started a month or 2 ago about the wider projects and current work in progress we've got, because the action plan work then needs to be balanced alongside all of that work, as touched on by Councillor Prowse, and us around the resources required to make sure that we can do what we can within that time period. So I think we'll have that initial conversation as part of the first informal meeting. That'll probably follow the main meeting, and then we'll build in an action plan reporting mechanism into the work programme for the following meetings after that.
Brilliant. Okay, Councillor Maskell.
I think Councillor Simon Maddox and myself and other members were interested in progress in Braunton, North Devon Homes assets and lack of progress, and we did ask if it might be possible to have a sort of regular update on what's going on with those particular mariners. I don't know whether that would be something we could have a regular update on, just so that it doesn't sort of slip under the radar.
And we have quarterly board meetings with North Devon Homes currently through our work through the housing group. So I suppose it's just making sure that updates from those meetings are then fed back through to yourself and to members. So we'll have a conversation with the member and make sure that that's built into the reporting that comes back to you, whether that be through the performance reporting or whether that be through a separate update to members solely on those North Devon Homes projects.
Councillor Balfour, I didn't want to put you on the spot. Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, obviously I'm aware of what's going on with Mariners and with Hill Gardens developments. The information's available. I can update you. I'll drop you an email later if you like. Obviously Mariners, Hill Gardens has come down. Mariners is going to come down. I will not go into any more detail at the moment, but I would be happy to share more information with you offline.
Thanks very much. Okay, if there's nothing else on that, then meeting's closed. Thanks very much.